first, so that every child can thrive. Welcome, Merlia. Tarun Cherukuri graduated with an MPA ID from the Harvard Kennedy School, and prior to his foray into ensuring access to quality education for all, he used to ensure access of quality ice cream and jams for all at Hindustan Unilever. He was a 2009 Teach for India Fellow and later worked as a city director with Teach for India from 2013 to 2015. He's the founder and CEO of Indus Action and also part of the 2019 cohort of the Obama Foundation Fellowship. Tarun also serves on the Teach for India Delhi Cities Board. Indus Action is a policy implementation do tank whose mission is to enable disadvantaged families in India sustainable access to their legislated rights. Welcome, Tarun.
Thanks, Vaishni, for having me here.
Aniket Doegar is an alumnus of SRCC Delhi and has more than 10 years of experience in the development sector. He was a Teach for India Fellow of 2010, Acumen Fellow 2018. Aniket was selected for Forbes 30 Under 30 Asia list in 2019 and also serves on the Alumni Advisory Board of Teach for India. Aniket serves as the CEO and co-founder of Haqdarshak, a social enterprise. Haqdarshak is the first ever enterprise to digitize welfare schemes on a single platform and provide application support to beneficiary of these schemes in low-income areas in both rural and urban communities. Welcome, Aniket.
Thank you, Vaishni.
Awesome. So now that I've introduced all of you guys, just a quick way how we're going to do this. So I'm hoping to spend about 30, 40 odd minutes, asking some of you guys to share your journey and wisdom with us. And then we'll have about 10, 15 minutes for our fellows to ask you questions, if any. And I'm going to just dive right in. I think given that we are a few hours away from celebrating our independence, I wanted to begin with a positively blue sky question. And this is for all of you and any of you can get us started. What is your dream for India and where would you like to see the country move in the coming decade and why? Tarun, Merlia, Aniket, free feel to start us off.
Should do alphabetical order.
Aniket will always be at a disadvantage.
So I think in terms of, independence, what it means to me, and I would say also talking about Darshak, is a lot about the rights and access to information in the current ecosystem. I think that's fundamentally, I believe, what we are also fighting for and struggling. On the ground, the right kind of information is key today, and not just talking about schemes, but just generally. So I think that to me stands out as one big challenge that we are facing, and is critical for us going forward as well as a country to grow. The asymmetry in terms of knowledge, information, simple access, we have seen in the last 6 months, like access to basic rights, basic things like Russian. Now with education, especially that we are talking ecosystem like Teach for India, access to digital tools, simple things like smartphones are making a big difference in how rights like education, livelihoods, health, food, this have a big impact. So I think this Independence Day, I would really say that how can we think of more ways of democratizing information and right information to the grassroots.
Okay,
now alphabetical from the back. Okay, I'll go next. I think for me, my dream for India is that that she continues to stand up for its weakest, its youngest, most vulnerable. She doesn't covet growth over development and at the cost of development, and that she understands that we are a part of a whole. I mean, I think if Corona has taught us anything, it's that we're part of a much larger whole, and that wellness as a country cannot be achieved if the rest of the world is burning, right? And I think so she must rise to every opportunity she gets to speak for the voiceless wherever they are. And I wouldn't limit it to saying that we stand up only for Indians.
Thanks, Merlia. That's really a beautiful way to put it. I think just building on that, we achieved only political freedom kind of in 1947. So I think my dream is, can we move closer to kind of economic and social freedoms as well for all citizens in the coming decade? And I think what that looks like is, and like Aniket said, we've seen kind of this play out more sharply in the last kind of 4 months, kind of the vulnerability citizens have on the edge of poverty. So one of the things that I worry about a lot is, even if India, say, grew by 8% for the next 30 years, we'll still have about 300 million people who are will be below the poverty line, and roughly 800 to 900 million actually at twice X the poverty line. So, I mean, such shocks will happen in the future as well, whether it's economic or climate or public health shocks. We almost have 1 billion people who are on the margins of vulnerability. So I think true freedom means, really elevating kind of basic human dignity of life and opportunity for all the billion citizens in the country who are kind of are not truly experiencing freedom in their lived realities. So that's, I think, the closer we move in the next decade, we'd be a better republic and a better democracy. Yeah. And that's my hope. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Tarun, Merlia, and Aniket, for the beautiful start. What I heard all three of you echo in some way or the other is just like how we all must stand up for the country's weakest, and which is kind of like a perfect segue into the next question, which was around the pathways that all three of you have chosen, which is engaging with the government systems. We know for good or the bad, but mostly for good, how government is the custodian of, equity, equality in some sense in the country. And we would love to know, like, when you were forging your path ahead on what you want to do and how you want to build the country, how did you go about like choosing this path? Why did you choose this path of working with the government, given how complex the machinery is, how long and hard the role is? So we'd love to hear some of that.
Okay, I can go. It's a question I ask myself every day, sometimes in reflection, sometimes in frustration. Why did I choose to work with the government? But I think it always comes back to this sort of unhealthy obsession that I had, my team and I had, in wanting to solve a big problem at scale, right? And I think to having this voice sort of gnaw at you every day and night, that we have to do right by our children. And working with the government, despite all the challenges, is, I believe, one of the most effective ways to solve a big problem for the most. It has its pitfalls, but it's a battle that we seem, my team and I seem most motivated to and inspired to fight. And I think at the end of the day, it is just that. Are you motivated enough to look at a big uh, problem as an opportunity to rise, or to shy away? So I think that is what it was for me. Do we
Okay, I
tag?
can.
Do we
Yeah,
tag?
so maybe we could tag. I'll go. I think, see, even if we take kind of recent, like last 4-5 months, right? Like, say, all our private energies, it's, say, we've contributed to different funds, and even if you think about the PM Care funds, a lot of philanthropists, the entire kind of private capital and philanthropy mobilized towards, say, PM Care funds, it adds up to about 10,000 crores. Right, so the government stimulus was about 1.7 lakh crores. So which is about 0.1%. The PM Care funds is roughly about 0.1% of the government stimulus. And so, and when you take the size of the non-profit sector as well, we have 50-60,000 crores as a sector versus kind of the government's expenditure on an annual basis about 30 lakh crores. And all of this is our money, right? I think my fundamental motivation is, government is the biggest, organization out there, and it's run by all of our money. And unlike a kind of, but the voice of every citizen doesn't reflect in kind of the same way in how governments operate, how decisions get taken. So that's kind of big motivation for me. One is like, look, like, we all have kind of a share of this really large money, and we need to have a say, and we need to engage in how this money is being spent for us. So that's kind of the fundamental motivation. And the second, of course, is can those monies be well spent towards the aims of justice, right? So can we ensure more movement towards equity in a lifetime, and that equity is only possible through government. And not to say that private sector cannot kind of role model or signal equity, but government's kind of core objective is to ensure deliver equity and equality and maintain kind of constitutional values. So both for those purposes, I think, like, even if you make a 1% change in how your taxes get spent, the returns are just huge. Like I said, in welfare, like, it's just 2 lakh crores of the stimulus. We know for a fact that government can only deliver 50% of it, right? So if you move that just by 1% as well, right? So it'll be equivalent to the entire non-profit sector value. So that's how I look at it, right? So we could all play a catalytic role in actually making governments work better for us. And it's our money, right? Yeah.
No, echoing a lot what Tarun said and Merlia said. I actually, when I started, I had no intention of working with the government, even though at Haqdarshak we work primarily with the government. But my initial years taught me that to stay away from government. I think that's essentially what you learn when you're starting. Because government doesn't pay. I mean, I'm being very honest. Like, I've done 5 contracts with government. The fact of the matter is, the reality is, for entrepreneurs, whether non-profit, for-profit, government doesn't pay or doesn't pay on time. We all want to collaborate with them. What I have learned over the years with government is that government institutions are actually in a way non-existent. It's individuals. And a lot of well-meaning IS officers and individuals are there where we should collaborate and we have to collaborate. And I think if we are very transparent with what we are doing, if we are very data-driven, I think there is a lot of value acknowledgement today in the system where government officers are actually welcoming of new ideas. So I think that to me is the way forward of working with the government, and why I started believing that yes, in the long run, there can be very strong partnerships with the government. So how can you work with those individuals? Because I think in our country, unfortunately, institutions are dying. Whatever they existed as well, whether it's judicial, constitutional, government structures, and that's unfortunate, but that's a fact. And similarly, but parallelly, I think there are some great individuals. Unfortunately, institutions are dying. Fundamentally believe that working with them, like Tarun mentioned, I think government structures and that's is critical to achieve all our goals, whether we are working in health, education, service delivery in the system for the marginalized communities. So I think that lens is very important to differentiate between the government institution and the government individuals. Unfortunately, the reality is in India, the individual is more powerful than the institution.
Yeah, beautifully put, Aniket. And similar, when Tarun, you were speaking, and Aniket, some bit of you touched upon, I remember this quote that I've been engaging with since yesterday. Manish Sabarwal said that government has an execution deficit, private sector has a trust deficit, and not-for-profit sector has a scale deficit. And what it really made me think about is how important it is for people like you and me and all of us to have this trust with the government and work in partnership with them. And I'm going to move into like a similar question about that. What is the role that you believe you're currently playing in the dream that you spoke about? So my first question on, what's a dream for India? So just curious to see what is it that you believe, what's your role that you're playing in this dream? And maybe what's the role that you would want to play in the coming decade? And sorry, before one of you begin, just a note to all fellows, please feel free to use the chat box to add your questions as they come in. And towards the end of the session, we'll take up some of those.
Right. Maybe I can take a shot at it first. So like you shared in the introduction, Parshni, like at Intersection, we focus on enabling sustainable access to rights. So very similar to Aniket's work at Haqdarshak. So our kind of and like you said right before this, like the role of nonprofits is to innovate. And so in that sense, like, we've seen how so important social protection is for every vulnerable citizen. And unfortunately, like, the India's social protection architecture is very unyielding. Like, every state you have about 500, very fragmented schemes where welfare is split among 500 schemes. But if you look at kind of China, Mexico, Brazil, their kind of social protection architecture, it was like this in early stages, but it evolved into a consolidation across about 10 schemes. So that's, for the government, and the reasons why we have 500 schemes, because government can't deliver at 100%. So you need like a wide variety of schemes for the political economy to claim success, right? With 25 to 50% implementation. So there's a reason why the status quo exists, but it is not sustainable. We can't run this fragmented basket of schemes for times immemorial. So somewhere we'll have to integrate our social protection architecture. So that is one vision. So as part of Intersection, like we want to demonstrate that it's possible in a few states where you actually benefit at a state level with fiscal savings, and also you save a lot of time for your frontline staff, whether it's ashas, Anganwadi workers, or DEOs, and all your supervisory staff as well. Which is actually beneficial for citizens as well, right? So you reduce transactional costs for citizens. And of course, you deliver more value for citizens. They don't have to run pillar to post, to get access to 500 schemes. So all of the social protection is available across maybe 10 schemes. And in doing that, we are hoping that, you're able to ensure a universal kind of basic income to each and every citizen. So that level of equity is important then for individuals to really have the security to then pursue what we call accumulation of productive assets, whether it's, education, health, or basic social security, or investment in productive assets. So that's really, what Intersection wants to demonstrate. So show it in a few, districts and states, and then hopefully, the innovation will catch up and, states will replicate that.
I'll go next. I think at Haqdarshak, we are essentially like Tarun mentioned, very similar to actually focusing on entitlements, government schemes and services. I think what we are really focused on also is delivering the service to the last mile. And one of the ways we do it is through women entrepreneurs. So we are training about 5,000 women entrepreneurs right now. So our goal is that these services, should have very little to do with government bureaucracy. They should be digitized and made available to the service providers on the ground, and these can be leveraged at a high level for livelihood generation as well. Because of the volume of money that is available in the government system, I think it is possible for us to ensure that the community can actually own it because of the system and utilize it. I mean, the government has already demonstrated it through the citizen service centers to some level, how this can be a great livelihood generator as well. So what we are trying to do at Haqdarshak is also to take it to women entrepreneurs, how this can be a great livelihood, ensure that the last mile delivery happens. But primarily, I think we also believe that this has to be very market driven, has to be a quality service. Because today, if you go to for a service delivery at any level, I mean, I'm talking about urban in fact is even worse than rural. In terms of any service delivery, the government's stance or how you go for how you approach a service provider is that as if that's government stance or the fit or going out of the way to help someone, which is not true, right? Like these are all public services. This is public money. So how can you make it of much better quality and ensure that this is totally driven by the community itself? So those are some of the goals on which we and ensure that those are some of the goals on which we are working and seeing that how we can scale that up in the communities.
Okay, I'll go next. So we want to basically see every child in India thrive, right? And I think, given the audience, this is almost going to be like preaching to the choir. So, Madhi works on foundational learning, and I think the NEP has made our life a little easier by giving foundational, universalizing foundational learning the kind of primacy that it did. So by 2025, the NEP says that all children by grade 3 would have achieved universal foundational literacy and numeracy. So Madhi works exactly on that. In fact, our vision statement is foundational learning first, so every child thrives. Madhi has basically partnered with the government of Tamil Nadu as its chief technical partner for the state FLN mission. So we will be working with the state for the next 5 years to implement the mission across the entire state, 32 districts, about 32 lakh children and 2 lakh teachers. And that has been, the journey so far has been, I think, incredible in going from 15 schools to working with an entire state at this point. And I do believe that access to quality primary education can be one of the most effective ways of making the India of our dreams come true. And education is at the intersection of various other social inequalities and complexities. But and there, I'm sure many are out there who are um, equally or more passionate about solving one of these crises or the other, and challenges. And so I hope sooner or later that these paths sort of converge and lead to that dream, that holistic dream of India that we have. So that's basically what Madhi does, and what I do with Madhi.
Thank you for those beautiful reflections. I'm going to shift gears a little bit. And given that the majority of this audience is our fellows, we would like for you to go back in time and just like talk a little bit about your fellowship journey and Merlia as your staff journey. If I had to like remind you, Tarun and Aniket, and why did you join the Teach for India Fellowship? And for all three of you would be that, how did your experience working with TFI or doing the fellowship actually help shape your views and the work that you're doing currently?
Aniket,
Oh,
I tag
yeah.
you.
So I think, firstly, I look back, I joined the fellowship right after college. I graduated from Delhi University and immediately joined. And I keep saying this, when I joined the fellowship, I had no intention to stay back in the sector. I didn't want to be, was studying commerce, didn't want to continue commerce, and this is a great opportunity to get a scholarship and go abroad and study, teach for India, and it will be a great 2 year experience. But I think at the time of joining the fellowship, one thing that I was able to do was spend a lot of time with the families of my students in the first year itself. Because I think one of the things is that when you're part of Teach for India and you're part of your classroom, you're so engaged, you're so committed to those 2 years and to those lives of those children, that it's important that you also spend equal time with the families, because the impact is going to be for the families as well. That really changed my perspective. I think that experience, that learning kind of was a mini internship at 21, to understand how coming from a privileged background and seeing what the ground reality is was a big learning phase for me, and something that I don't think I would have got anywhere else. Where you are interacting and actually seeing firsthand was a big learning, and what communities go through. That really shaped my thinking in terms of very clearly. I think since then that I may not want to continue in the community classroom, but I wanted to be committed to the. That really shaped my thinking internally. I think since then that I may not want to continue years in the kind of work I did to become immediately after the fellowship and then leading up to starting at Darshak as well. So I think my choice of joining the fellowship, my experience in the 2 years, like I said, was really, really helpful and gave me, and that's how I experienced in the 2 years of the reality on the ground. For someone at 21, I don't think I would have got any other such opportunity.
Okay, I'll go next. Thank you for actually having me on the panel, Payashni. I've always felt Teach for India has, of course, it's about the fellows, and being recognized as a staff alum is special. So thank you. Before I go ahead, so just to repeat, I am a staff alum, and I did not do the fellowship, but I've spent so much time in the classroom that I might as well have been awarded the fellowship at the end of it. Um, I joined Teach for India because it seemed like the perfect job opportunity to sort of marry the social entrepreneur and the social sector professional in me, so to speak, because I was the first ever staff on board for the Chennai chapter. So right from finding a carpenter to kind of getting the cupboards in place for the office to sitting across a bureaucrat and negotiating fellows placements, it exposed me to an array of experiences, and I don't think any other opportunity would have given me that. And I've said this time and time again that there would have been no Madi without Teach for India. And had I not spent those hours with teachers listening to their personal stories, to their professional struggles, I probably would have been one among those millions who continues to vilify teachers, who continues to blame only the teachers for everything that is wrong with the system, and not recognizing the fact that this is a systemic problem, and not just the fact that teachers are lazy and not motivated. And had I not spent those hours sitting in those classrooms watching children struggling to make sense of the world around them, I don't think I'd be as obsessed, almost panic driven to want to solve this problem today. So I think I say it again, there would have been no Madi without Teach for India, without that experience with Teach for India.
Thanks, Malia. So I think, like you said in my introduction, I didn't want to kind of, make and sell ice cream jams and ketchups or FMCG products for the rest of my life. So it's as simple as that. Like I felt very, dispensable at Hindustan Unilever. Like, I was, one fine day, 26/11 happened, and my skip boss and everybody up to Paul Coleman was in Taj that night. Touchwood, like, everybody kind of escaped, but, it was a big reflection or realization moment for the company, saying what would have happened if everybody from general manager up to Unilever CEO kind of lost their lives that night. But actually, like one big reflection was the company would have actually continued. Like it was so kind of institutionalized. The next level of managerial layer could have somehow or kind of the ex boards and everybody would have rallied, and Unilever still should have survived that shock. That was actually a big kind of, well, I felt proud that, like we would have stepped up as managers if such an untoward incident happens. But it really struck me that actually, like, I'm a big, I'm a small cog in the wheel in this really big system, which is very well oiled. And it should run kind of even without me, take me out of this and, this will go on forever, HUL will continue to be a great company and will continue to make FMCG products for the next 30 to 50 years. So that was, I think, an important moment for me where I said, look, I want to do something more. I want to be kind of indispensable to a few people in life apart from my family. So and that's what Teach for India provides, like at least like for a classroom, like you can take full responsibility. Like Aniket and Malia said, like you can do everything from kind of grounds up. Right? So take full responsibility to 40 children, their families, that particular community, and invest all your heart and soul in it. So that I think is very empowering. Just that having that role and opportunity to say like, look, like you matter, and like your presence is going to make a whole lot of difference to a few families. So I think that kind of changed my perspective about my own agency as to what I could contribute. I think the second, like, kind of both of them shared as well. Like, I came in as, having experienced like all the systems and processes at HUL. So I thought I could bring a lot of that, the chemical engineering I had and all the learnings I had as an engineer or a professional engineer at HUL. So I thought I could easily build a toilet in my community, in my school. So in 2 years, like I couldn't put a brick, I don't know if there's anybody from NCA here. After 10 years, we finally managed to, revamp the building. And so it's that kind of really got me to realize that, how difficult, translating the spirit of a policy from paper to actually last mile practices. Our team might say you might need a compound wall, you need a functional toilet, you need functional labs, and etc. But that wasn't kind of translating in my school, and so just going through that political process of trying to bring about that change, was really humbling. So I said, like, boss, I can't move a brick also in the school for whatever reason. There were a lot of politics involved. But that was very humbling and illuminating. That's what really motivated me to say, like, now I really need to study public policy, because I don't know what's happening here. Because there's a great policy on paper, but it's not, translating into the lived experience of my children and their families. Because they all want a toilet. They're really experiencing pain. Women teachers, who largely were the 90% of staff, would not use the toilet, right? So they would much rather wait for the school to end, go back to home. And it was really a question of basic human dignity, for me. And the fact that I couldn't do it, so I think that was one singular experience which really kind of motivated. I said, like, look, whatever I do, like, I have to take more risks to really move the system. And I first have to, of course, understand it. So yeah, Teach for India played that role in one, like, a very deep commitment to a group of children whom I still stay in touch with. Like, now, unfortunately, they're all on WhatsApp and Facebook. So I have to really watch my words while I'm out there. So that's great, like really intimate relationships with a group of people and their families whom I've had the privilege of tracking. And so that they're really kind of where I derive my kind of soul force from. And then up and above that, like, it really kind of, it gave me the experience to study the overall system and actually playfully engage with it, right? So Teach for India also gave me the framework to not get frustrated by that experience, but actually say, like, you have to kind of explain why the status quo is the way it is. Yeah. And like Merlia said, intersection wouldn't have happened, if without the Teach for India fellowship. So there's a lot of path dependency definitely there. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, the three of you, for like such really kind, beautiful words. And Tarun, I feel your pain. All my kids have, the kids that I taught are now in 12th grade. In fact, they're now in college, and all of them have like Instagram accounts. And it makes me really, really cautious of being on any social media platform. So I hear you. You kind of also stole my next question. So I'm going to pose it anyway to Merlia and Aniket. And I would love for you to come back with a memory. But since we are on the memory lane, I just wanted the three of you to share maybe one memory of either your current work or from your Teach for India classroom, which was kind of your aha moment and where you said, okay, I am doing the right thing at the right place. And just kind of like something that every time you are feeling low and not sure of where you want to go, that memory hopefully rejuvenates you. So I'm basically seeking a powerful story that keeps you going.
I have two to share. One was a story that sparked the idea of Madhi, and second is the story, I'll keep it brief. The second is the story of what happened at the end of the first year at Madhi. The story that sparked the idea of Madhi was, I was one of the government relations managers at Teach for India Chennai, and I was visiting one of our schools, and I saw a teacher standing outside the classroom, leaning over the metal grill of the window and taking notes while there was a fellow teaching inside the class. And I just, gently walked to her, up to her, and I said, "Ma'am, can I help you? What are you doing? It seems like, you're straining to here." She said, "No, there seems to be some magic that happens in these classrooms, and I'm just taking notes from outside. I don't want to go in and disturb the teacher, so I'm just standing here and taking some notes for my class, and I wish I had access to the kind of learning strategies and ideas that these young people seem to be having." And that basically was that moment where I wondered, what if we took all of what we have as fellows and gave it to these teachers in a way that was simpler for them to sort of get used to and pick up and do it for their own classrooms, right? I mean, in a way, there was an inequity within inequity, because because there was inequity already in the school for various reasons, and then there was a Teach for India and a non-Teach for India classroom, and how beautiful it would be if that kind of inequity within inequity didn't exist. So that is where Madi actually came from, where we said we would use a lot of these ideas from Teach for India and break it down for teachers and start training teachers on those kind of strategies. The second story was at the end of the first year at Madi, where a teacher who had been a part of our first year intervention walked up to us at the end of the year, and she said, I was going to turn in my resignation, voluntary resignation, we call it VRS, voluntary resignation this year, because I was really didn't feel motivated or inspired to continue. And after being a part of this program for a year, I'm withdrawing my resignation and I will continue teaching for, I think she had 6 more years left in her career. And she said, I'm withdrawing my resignation and I'm going to commit to completing my tenure and going to complete 6 more years. And out of those 6 years, we were in the school for 3. So she was there till we completed. And I think she continues to work there. So that was a huge validation for, I guess, that is the story that I go back to on days where I just want to retire myself. So, yeah, thanks.
So powerful, Merlia. Thanks so much for sharing.
I think for me, yeah, one story that basically incident in Teach for India, which basically helped me stay back in the sector and not go for any further studies or leave the sector was, so I was struggling in my first year big time. Through the institute, through the first 6 months, we had 70 kids in the classroom. I had a great co-teacher, Archana, and she helped me a lot. But I was pretty miserable. I mean, in my first 3-4 months, I had no clue what was happening, what TAL and teaching as leadership, and I was like, I just like making worksheets, getting up at 6 a.m. It was pretty tough. And I think my co-teacher really helped. Like I said, the school system through the year. And the end of the year, 8 of my students went ahead and got scholarships in KC Thakre School, which is a scholarship school run by Akanksha Foundation, Thermax Foundation in Pune. That year was the highest. They were grade 2 students, went to grade 3 there. All of them are in class 12 now. And I think that experience from where I started, especially my year and my institute, to where it ended in year 1, really made me believe that things can happen, things can change. Even sometimes you don't see the light at the end of the tunnel sometimes, but I think if you are persistent, the kind of impact, the kind of change that I could feel that happened in those lives, and I knew they were now set for success. So I think that really, really empowered me as an individual to feel that yes, this is the right choice that I've taken to join the fellowship, to be in this sector, and I want to continue. So that is the reason. That incident is the reason that I'm still here. And the second is very early on with Haqdarshak. So before Haqdarshak, I also started a foundation trying to work on the similar idea of ensuring information on government schemes to citizens, and failed miserably. Couldn't figure out anything. And I think at the end of that trial period, when I was working in communities and trying to help people get access to information, I remember this is an area about 60 kilometers from Pune, Bele block. And I was on my own with one intern, going with a mobile platform and helping people getting their information and telling them what schemes they're eligible for. And there was this 70-year-old widow grandmother who didn't know that there was a widow and old age pension that she was eligible for and can get. So by doing 4-5 visits, I was able to help her get that scheme. And then when I asked her, what will you do with this 1,000 rupees per month? She told me that I'm going to ensure that 500 rupees I save and 300 I pay for tuition for my grandchildren, buy Parle G, get a bunch of things. So I think that really also told me that sometimes small things that we take as for granted is such a empowering thing for the community. something that is their right, something that is public money that they should be getting and they don't get, by a simple trigger of just informing them, can become such a big change. So a lot of times when I find things difficult with government, with the team, things are not moving with COVID, I always go back to that interaction with her. And it's fine even if you had one person, if you can play that role, that is huge. So yeah.
I love the relationship, Aniket, that you establish of one person actually making the move, and it's beautiful. Tarun, one more story from you before I take up some of the questions our audience has already asked.
Yeah, lots of. I was really struggling to pick one, but I think like one thing that really floods my memory when I think about the fellowship is towards the end of second year, where as an entire primary school we performed the Broadway Lion King musical. English end to end, and fully choreographed sequences of all songs. The entire kind of 90-minute act. So it was a really proud moment. Like all our parents were there as well. Students' parents, and behind the scenes, like nobody could kind of hold their tears back. Like we all couldn't believe. I mean, it wasn't a surprise for me because we had really worked on it. It was really a 2-year culmination into what those 90 minutes manifested into. But I remember, like parents coming behind the scenes after the musical, and just saying things that which you don't want to kind of let go of for the rest of your life. Like you're like almost a brother to us, or like parent like my child never had. And like in my wildest of dreams, I didn't know like my child was capable of this. So yeah, I think like it really for me like is a memory that I'll constantly keep in my heart. That at a really fundamental level, like it all boils down to what you believe is possible, right? So I remember like even when I presented the vision at the end of first year or early second year, where you had to present our big goals and vision. So everybody is like, look, like are you selling Broadway visions to kids? Like how can they go to Harvard? What is this Harvard happy class? Like you're trying to sell a Western idea, etc. So there was a lot of healthy skepticism in my own cohort itself. But somewhere at a very fundamental level, I said like, bhai, matlab, if I can aspire to go to Harvard, so why can't my kids aspire, right? So so what does it mean to really demonstrate excellence? So that was that year's project about like let's really show to ourselves and a community what excellence looks like, feels like. And I think I feel really proud, like when kids got a taste of like what it feels like you kind of left them as a teacher with something enduring. So every time I meet, like, we have to start a check-in with like, some reminiscence of, what they felt about the Lion King musical. So yeah, like I think I take that as kind of one thing I'm really proud of, what we've accomplished as a school together. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Tarun. And I was thinking through your example, so many of Teach for India values came to the forth, right? Just the sense of possibility, the vision for excellence, the love that you feel for your kids. So thanks so much. I'm going to pause my talking, and there are 4 or 5 questions that are there. I'm going to read out, there is one for Tarun, and there are a couple of other ones for all of you. I'll start with your question, Tarun. It says, my question is for Tarun. What will be your advice to fellows who will be working in government or corporation school in terms of how to get the best from the system?
Right. My simple advice is, I think, appreciate the beauty of the system. So I think, whatever, I think our first instinct is to change it. So I think I learned this from Pratapban Mehta. So I'm going to steal his lines. So he said, like, too many of us are trying to change the world. Too few of us are trying to understand it. So I think, like, it's great that you have the opportunity to embed yourself in a government system. And like we said, that's where kind of the largest scale of change is. But there's a reason why things exist the way they exist, right? So, go in with a lot of curiosity, go in with a lot of humility, saying that, there's a beauty to why things exist the way they are. And, before we rush to, change or intervene and, be a change maker. So that would be my simple advice. And yeah, I think the more you appreciate kind of the beauty of why things exist the way they are, you would then be able to find where the leverage is to really change the things without having to shake up a lot of things. Yeah. The other thing I think I learned very late, my kind of manager at TFI, Sham, kind of taught me this. He said, like, don't boil the ocean. So yeah, there are a lot of things like, you'll feel, you want to bring your emotions to work and you'll feel angry about the injustice, inequity, but really be dispassionate and, rational about where kind of the strategic lever is. Like I said, it took me a long while. So I'm still a very passionate person. So I get kind of consumed by my emotions and passions sometimes. But yeah, like I keep reminding myself what kind of Sham taught me and my other managers have taught me, like, don't boil the ocean, right? So, find the leverage to kind of where you can move the system strategically. So those are my two pieces of advice for any school that you're embedded in, but more so maybe government and municipal corporation schools, because you might find yourself not having so many degrees of freedom. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Tarun. And it's also, again, the perfect segue into the next question that's for all of you or any of you. Sneha Koshi says, Aniket briefly talked about accessing service providers to achieve the larger vision of equity. I would like to understand from the panelists, once you recognize a policy gap, how do you leverage public distribution systems, service providers, local level managers, etc., to work towards the vision? Aniket, you're frozen for us. Sorry, your voice is breaking, Aniket. Okay. We'll wait for him to join. Merlia, do you want to start us off with this question?
I think I mean, the kind of model that Madhi works with is very different, Payoshni. So I don't know if this question directly applies to how we work with the system. So I would probably defer it to Aniket to respond.
Sure. We can move on to the next one, which I guess would be something that all of you would like to input in. An anonymous attendee has said there are numerous issues to be addressed for this nation. What are the 5 things GOI needs to prioritize in the next 2 years? And I'm guessing we can also answer it with the view towards education specifically, also given that the new education policy, national education policy, has just been out as well.
Oh wow, I was hoping it was anything but the NEP that we will borrow from, but um, I think, of course, the first thing is improving significantly the quality of primary education that the country currently offers. Second would be healthcare. I think that's on top of everybody's mind, and making good quality public healthcare system accessible to all. The third would be making it safer for its women and children, making the country safer for its women and children. The fourth would, of course, I think I would go to a little towards growth and looking at the teeming millions of young people coming out of our colleges and ITIs, and the kind of employment opportunities that they need to be provided to be gainfully employed, because otherwise we're going to have a massive problem on our hands if we ignore that, if we ignore the economic ramifications of unemployment and underemployment entirely. And this was in no particular order, but I think agricultural reforms are also something that we need to look at seriously as a country. So I didn't mean to put that last, but these would be the 5 areas that I think we can focus on as a country. Again, you said 5, so I've limited it to 5, but we could come up with a new policy document with how much needs to be done.
Aniket is in back. I'll quickly take, maybe like I'll go beyond NEP. I think like, my answer is, decentralization, 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 and decentralization. So I'll say it 5 times over. I think that's what government of India needs to do. I think like somehow this belief that, just stepping back, like India's total number of public servants are about 4 crore people, right? So that's about 3% of our population. And the global benchmark is 12 to 15%. So in, Singapore, Scandinavian countries, US, Singapore. So one to believe that like, like having in spite of having less number of public servants, that we'll be able to kind of run things out of, Delhi and state capitals. So we've already kind of, missed the bus by many decades. So I think we need to decentralize at the third tier of governance, whether it's urban local bodies or, gram panchayats, not just in terms of just paper decentralization, but actually funds and functionaries. And last 4 months have been, a classical case study, right? Like you just can't take, decisions related to public health, in Delhi and state capitals. And if you see models of success as well, whether it's Kerala in our own country or other kind of countries that have done well, Taiwan or New Zealand, etc., it's been a classical case study of decentralization. Local people know best what's good for them. Empower them with funds, functionaries, and a framework to make local decisions. So yeah, I think like any problem like I look at, like, we now work in health, education, different welfare entitlements, we land up at the same, stuck in the pipe, right? So it's the supervisory capacity and the frontline capacity. They're not empowered to take the decisions that they're supposed to take, right? So let's take COVID as well, right? Contact tracing, right? So, what are the rules for containment? Like, how do people need to be contact traced? Like, an ASHA needs to be empowered to be able to take that decision, to be equipped with tools and negotiating facility to do that. But it's being taken by, people in state capitals and, at central level. So yeah, that is what leads to kind of breakdown in kind of public service delivery. So yeah, if anything, if we can crack decentralization in the next decade, yeah.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Tarun.
Tarun.
I +1 on that.
Thanks. Aniket, you are here. I'm hoping you can hear us even if your video is off.
Yeah, sorry for that.
Okay. Yeah, there's one question for you that we were hoping you could answer. Should I read it out for you? It's Sneha Koshi's question, top on the Q&A panel right now.
Yeah. So the access to service providers, right? The question.
Yeah.
No. So I think in our experience at Haqdarshak, we have seen that it has to be broken down step by step. So there are large distribution networks. To give you an example, Chhattisgarh government 3 years back launched a program where 33 lakh smartphones were to be given to 33 lakh women, members of self-help groups. End of the day, 17 lakh smartphones were given, 16 lakh weren't given because the government changed from BJP to Congress. The 17 lakh smartphones also, 50% of them don't work. So that's a classic example of how you can leverage. The idea was that 33 lakh women in Chhattisgarh, once they have smartphones, they can be then trained for multiple things, whether it's on livelihoods, as trainers, financial service providers, bunch of things. And we tried building a model around that and we failed. So I think we need to focus on using the distribution systems in a very, taking a cue from what Tarun also just mentioned, in a very decentralized way, at a very small unit, gram panchayat to gram panchayat, department to department. It's really difficult at scale to do it because of the changing environment and a lot of things which are out of our control, especially in policy. All the people working on policy, one of the biggest challenges is that nothing is in control. Which government comes in, which policy comes in, which policies are cancelled. So I think a lot of it has to be done at a very, like I said, local level. And I think our entire models of different projects can't be, and that's the reason they can't be put entirely basis the government ecosystem, leveraging the government service distribution service. So it's a tricky thing, and I think if we haven't yet got a large scale example of a PPP partnership where we've been able to leverage large scale distribution networks like ASHA workers, Anganwadi workers. I anyways believe they are underpaid, overworked government, and we put a lot of onus on services on them. But I think right now it's distribution centers or service providers are little broken, is what I would say.
Yeah. Thanks, Aniket. There are a bunch of other questions, but in the interest of time, we have 3 minutes to go. And I do want all the panelists to ask one question that I'm sure will be relevant to our audience here, which is what advice will you give to our cohort of 2020 to help them fully embrace the fellowship and the change we need to make possible in this country? Do I need to tag one of you?
Like,
Balia, do you want to get us started?
okay. I don't know if I can, provide any advice with respect to the fellowship specifically, obviously because I didn't do it, but I used to tell, fellows who I was very close to, who had just started the fellowship. And there were many times where they would have difficult days in school, and obviously I didn't exactly relate to it, but you relate to other phases in your life where you felt like quitting, and all I told them was survive the first 100 days, no matter what, no matter how hard it gets, no matter how impossible it gets to continue going to school. Don't underestimate the power of showing up. So show up to school every day, no matter how hard it gets. And I think the bigger life gyan, so to speak, is that whether you figure out what you want to do or not, I think you absolutely must figure out what you do not want to do. And if circumstances allow it, don't go down that path. I know it's very easy to be sitting, in a place of privilege to say, don't worry about paychecks, don't live for a paycheck, follow your heart, and but you cannot absolutely sort of divorce these very real challenges from to balance your personal commitments and your commitment to a cause that you feel deeply about. But if you do enjoy those kind of privileges, do not let them go in wane. I think it's criminal to enjoy, say, the privilege of education or of, of safety, of gender, of class, of caste, and not do something positive with it. So pick a problem that you want to solve, obsess over wanting to solve it, and do whatever it takes. In India, change is slow, so be patient and be humble about how quickly the needle can move. But do not for a moment doubt the fact that the needle is indeed moving. The needle is moving, guys, uh, and you will see this over the next few years of your life and mine, hopefully.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would say, like, I think I completely agree with Malia, that when she says that, it's take the first 100 days and take the initial days carefully, and don't think about it full 2 years. But I would also add to it saying that don't have any biases during the fellowship. I think a lot of times when I look back and I had a certain thought, oh, I'll take this out of the fellowship. After 2 years, I'll have the full ground experience. I know how communities work. I'll be an expert in teacher training. I'll be an expert in this. I would recommend, just because of my own learning, that don't have any such preconceived notions. Go with a learning mindset. I think the amount of learning that you can get in those 2 years inside the classrooms, in those communities, if I reflect back, those are some of the strongest learnings that I've had. They've really helped me. And even now I'm learning. So I think you can never get enough. It's such a vast and diverse country. So yeah, I think if you go with that mindset, there will be so many learning opportunities. Also compared to 2010, and I think Tarun was 2009. So I mean the first batch, but compared to now, the advantage is there's such a vast and diverse alumni network that I think this is one of the best times to be part of the fellowship. COVID also, while challenging, I feel this is the best time to learn, innovate, think of new models. I think every few years you get a chance to do something really innovative. And I think this is the time with COVID where we can ensure as this batch to kind of really be a great opportunity as well.
I just add to what Merlia and Aniket said. So I think we've already done a great job by signing up for the fellowship and committing yourself to kind of the next 2 years of especially during these times, right? These are uncertain times. So one, kudos for that. So my kind of simple advice would be put your heart on the line. And like Aniket said, forget about what next, etc. So things will emerge, but for the 2 years, commit your heart to a set of relationships, and I think that will kind of provide you moral compass. And the second, I guess, life Gyan, like Malia said, I think this is once again borrowed from Bill Gates. I guess he said you tend to overestimate what you can do in a year and underestimate what you can do in a decade. So think of the fellowship as a building block for really your development sector career. So invest these 2 years in really knowing yourself, knowing why you're in this for and who you're in this for, and don't kind of overestimate what you can accomplish in these 2 years. But that will actually set you up for the next decade, and you'll be surprised how much you will be able to accomplish in the next decade if you do these 2 years really well with all sincerity and humility. Yeah.
Your words are so inspiring, the three of you. It's making me want to go back and do the fellowship. So thank you so very much, Tarun, Merlia, Aniket, for joining us today, sharing your experiences, your journey, your wisdom, so much of beautiful memories. Thanks so much again. Thank you, audience, for coming, engaging, and I'm wishing all of you a great evening ahead. Bye.
Thank you. Happy Independence Day in
Thank you.
advance.
Yes.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Malia.
Thank
Bye.
you. Great to have you all. Bye.
Bye.